Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Our guest today is the President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. Mr. President, thank you very much for being on the show with us today.
My pleasure.
I'm going to begin with the International Criminal Court. It just dropped charges of crime against humanity against your Vice President, William Ruto, as well as journalist Joshua Sang. For our viewers, let's just remind them that back in December 2014, similar charges against you collapsed at the ICC, as the court is known. What's your reaction?
I think we are very happy and satisfied with the result. And it just goes to vindicate the position that we have always held, that these charges against us were trumped-up charges, and we were never supposed to have been before that court. And 7.5 years down the road, the position that we have always maintained has now been accepted by the court itself, with the position that was taken by the court yesterday, that my deputy, just like myself, had no case to answer.
The court, however, could eventually bring other charges if it is able to gather more evidence. Do you think that's still possible?
I don't think it's possible because, as we have always insisted, we have never been guilty of any of the charges that were brought before us. And that position holds. And therefore, I don't believe that there is any possibility of them bringing up any new charges, and this is the position that we hold. And for us, as a country, our focus now is to put this situation behind us, to be able to work together as a country, and to focus on the future development of our country, on healing, on reconciliation, and on ensuring that we are able to achieve for our people the prospects that they have always desired and dreamed of, without this huge dark cloud that has been hanging over us for the last 7 years.
The presiding judge said the lack of evidence was possibly due, I quote him, to witness interference and political meddling. Those are accusations that have been made by the chief prosecutor as well, that Kenya stood in the way of justice.
Those are accusations that they continue to hold, but they do not tell the world that Kenya, throughout this whole period, the prosecutor had free access into Kenya at any time. They had full offices running with no interference, with the full cooperation of the state, despite the fact that I was president.
They're lying?
Absolutely. And we have said, with regard witnesses, a lot of the witnesses, they themselves moved them. They were based here in Europe, a good number of them. Yeah? And what they claim as interference is because people recanted their evidence. And that, again, is in line with what we had always stated, that these cases were politically instigated cases, and these individuals eventually just came up and said, I was told to say such and such, and I am no longer willing to continue with those lies. That doesn't mean that they were interfered with. They just came up and told the truth, which was in line with what we had been stating from the very beginning.
The ICC, is it racist? The African Union resolution that you sponsored, you called for the withdrawal of the ICC. Yes. Should Africa withdraw from the ICC because it is going after Africans only?
We are insisting that the ICC is no longer following the basic tenets that we all supported when it was being created, when the Rome Statute was being created. That they have gone against that they are not necessarily following proper legal jurisprudence, but rather being pushed to follow specific cases for reasons that are unknown to a lot of us. And this was the reason for our disappointment. So our argument has always been, and we have pushed this argument at the state parties, we have pushed this argument at the Security Council of the United Nations, that unless this organization is reformed, to be able to focus itself on what it is supposed to be doing in a fair and balanced manner, we in Kenya and we as Africans need to then pull out, because we cannot have a court that is pursuing agendas other than that which that organization was legally constituted to do.
Okay. I want to get to something else that's been in the news, the so-called Panama Papers, major leak reported by various newspapers about offshore companies being used. Kenyan has been named. The Deputy Chief Justice, Kalpana Rawal, cited because of ties to 4 offshore companies that were allegedly used to do real estate business in the United Kingdom. She says everything is legal. Nevertheless, you as the president, do you think this should be examined, probed, or that she should be sanctioned?
We have always said that any wrongdoing should be examined, should be probed. I can't comment too much on that because, as you're aware, I have been here, so I have not really been following on that particular situation. But it is something that one would need to look into to see if there was any illegal activity that took place. So,
If so,
I can't. If indeed that there was something illegal that took place, then justice will have to take its course. But I cannot accuse a person without proper investigations and the like. I am not fully aware of.
This is related to the issue that you've talked a lot about, the corruption issue. I think you've described it as a national security threat. Yes. The anti-corruption watchdog says over 50% of Kenyans believe that corruption has actually increased since you are in power. How much of a concern is it? I read some figures that graft is equivalent to 1/3 of the Kenyan budget. I mean, how much of a threat is it to Kenya?
I think we must put this into proper context. Why is it that people are saying what they're saying? Why is the perception? It is because, for the first time in Kenyan history, there is a government that is not pushing and brushing issues under the carpet. These are issues of past and even current corruption. And all of these now are being highlighted. Members of my government, including, have been forced to resign and are facing charge. This is, unheard of.
I want to get to the war against terrorism, as it's called. You've exchanged with the French president here. You even visited the Secret Service here in France. Exactly 1 year ago, 148 students were gunned down in Garissa University. Back in September 2013, the tragic Westgate Mall attack. The level of the threat is still very high in Kenya.
Well, the level of the threat is not very high in Kenya. The level of the threat is very high globally. No single country is safe from these criminals. What we are saying is that we have intensified our efforts, to dealing with this particular situation, improving and heightening security, strengthening our capacities, our legal regime to be able to confront this, and we believe that we have it largely, under control. That is not to say that we are 100% safe. No country, as I said, is 100% safe, and that is why we are continuing to partner with other countries, as we indeed are doing in France, to share intelligence, to share information, to share know-how as to how do we deal with these particular terror groups, because they are indeed a threat, like I'm saying, to not just Kenyan and French national security. They are a threat to global peace and security.
Have you foiled plots recently?
Oh, several. Just the same as here in France. You have also had many threats. Many also have been foiled. But at the end of the day, there might be that one that may sneak through. But we just have to continue to collaborate, both in the counterterrorism efforts that we are putting in place, in terms of intelligence sharing, but also in dealing with the causes and issues underlying the radicalization of our people in order to bring this to a proper end.
Is the organization of the Islamic State having any ties with Kenya? I read that the Kenyan police believes 20 Kenyans went to Libya, actually, how much?
Well, as you know, Al-Shabaab, some of them have splintered and others have joined and pledged their allegiance to ISIS. So yes, it is the same threat. To me, I don't recognize, yes, they're doing things differently, but to me, they are birds of the same feather. They are part and parcel of the terror groups that are causing mayhem and destruction across the world. So we need to confront the Al-Shabaab and other Al-Qaeda linked terrorists just as much as we need to confront the ISIS-based organizations and their affiliates.
Will Al-Shabaab be vanquished?
I believe ultimately not only will Al-Shabaab be vanquished, Al-Qaeda will be vanquished, and ISIS will be vanquished. But this requires all of us to act in concert at a global level. This is a war of civilizations. We must protect civilization. We must protect our way of life, and we can only do so by working in concert together.
Last question, the issue of doping. The World Anti-Doping Agency will rule on May 12th, it seems, whether to recommend a ban on Kenya for the Olympic Games to be held in Rio. Kenya missed 2 deadlines to basically create an anti-doping agency, criminalize doping. There have been 40 or so Kenyan athletes who have been involved in doping. Is Kenya at risk of missing the Olympics?
Well, we hope not, because
but there's a risk.
The truth of the matter is, and this is what we have put across, every country has a way in which it formulates its rules, and we cannot jump that step. We have made a commitment. The law has been passed by my cabinet already, but it must now go through the processes of enactment, which goes through the legislature. It must have public participation, all right? But the country itself is committed, and what we're telling them is that let our processes go through. What we are assuring them is that we may not be able to achieve the deadline that they have set, but the deadline should be based on the national legislative process. And I believe that within the next month, we should have gone through all the necessary processes that guide the way we make laws in Kenya.
Thank you very much, President Kenyatta, for being our guest. Thank you very much for watching this interview on France 24. Stay tuned for more news.